top of the day to you. Welcome to Storytime. I'm Murph. And if you're viewing this on premiere day, happy St. Patrick's Day. And if you're not viewing this on premiere day, well, you're at Murph's. Every day is St. Patrick's Day, so have a great day. May you find the pot of gold at the end of your rainbow. How was that? Better? All right. Enough of that. Here we go. Welcome to Storytime. In this edition of Storytime, we're going to be listening to episode 9, which is part 2 of chapter 2, The Morning Report. In this episode, you're going to meet a few more new citizens of the lands. In the last episode, you met young Joe. Young Joe had an interesting encounter with a rather large horse that we knew was Kenneth. And during that encounter, he saw a message from a magic torch. And he decided, I'm going to take that magic torch. And that doesn't bode well with Kenneth. So he gives chase, but he doesn't get very far because young Joe injected him with some tranquilizing fluid. So young Joe gets away there. We also know that Agent Clayton and his team has been tasked with interrogating Princess Natalie, Giggling Zamora, and running Chavez. Director Jakalian wants to know what they know about the disappearance of the professor from Techland. Agent Clayton's interrogation was fruitless. He didn't get anything. So let's see if the rest of his team does any better. Surprise, a young man is still passed out. He is in the back of Kwean Kwon's store. And he has an interesting encounter with a mouse. But that mouse told him to trust the process. Now, what the heck do you think that means? Then he wakes up and he comes face to face with Captain Hobogon and Kwean Kwon. If I came face to face with them like that, I would probably pass out again. Did he? Or did he wake up? I don't know. I guess we better listen to episode 9 and find out what happens, right? But remember to stick around after the credits to hear my concluding remarks and hear a little more about maybe the next episode and then what's going on. So, hey, a 1 and a 2, and away we go. Welcome to the lands. Episode 9, Chapter 2, The Morning Report, Part 2. Our quote for this episode: "So, let me be the first to welcome you to the lands." Kwean Kwon. Trust the process. Captain Hobogon and Kwean Kwon were sitting next to the sleeping young man when suddenly he began to shake and moan. They both put their cups of coffee down and stood over him. Then, suddenly, the young man on the table opened his eyes and sat straight up. He came face to face with Captain Hobogon and Kwean Kwon. This startled him so much that he laid right back down on the table and stared at the ceiling. He brought his hand to his forehead, closed his eyes, and mumbled to himself, "Trust what process, stupid little mouse?" Captain Hobogon shot Kwean Kwon a look, but she must not have heard it. She had a big smile on her face. "I am sorry. Did we frighten you?" Kwean Kwon said as she let out a little laugh, then continued to the captain. "I guess if the first thing I woke up to was our two faces, I'd be scared too." They both laughed again. The young man slowly sat up and looked around. There was some daylight now, so things were a little clearer. He was on a table in what appeared to be a storeroom of some type. There was merchandise all over the place. He tried to piece together what had happened. He remembered waking up face down on the ground, and it was really cold. In fact, he was still kind of cold. Someone helped him roll over, then grabbed his chest. It was that smiling captain guy. He was somewhere called Hubland, and remembered seeing some man pointing the direction home. Right now, he was just very confused. "Well, he definitely didn't wake up laughing, you know what I mean?" Kwean Kwon exclaimed with a big laugh. Captain Hobogon joined her. The young man shook his head, trying to make sense of the whole thing. One thing that kept popping into his head was Hubland. He was pretty sure that was a place, and he was there. That seemed like a good place to start. Are we still in Hubland? He asked. Oh, heavens, no! Kwean Kwon said with another laugh. You are now in Merchant Valley. My name is Kwean Kwon. I am the head shopkeeper here, and on behalf of everyone in Merchant Valley, I would like to welcome you to our cute little town. Well, thank you very much, I guess, the young man said, still unsure of what was going on. You remember me, don't you? Captain Hobogon asked, extending his hand. Captain Hobogon, right? The young man replied hesitantly, shaking Captain Hobogon's outstretched hand. That's correct. It's nice to meet your acquaintance. Now, who, may we ask, are you, good sir? The young man stared at them. Although he was looking at them, he was actually searching his mind, and he was disturbed to find out there wasn't much there. This wasn't very good. The bump on his head started throbbing, so he brought his hand up to it. You have a nasty bump there, Captain Hobogon said. Any idea how you got it? The young man just stared at him. He couldn't remember very much at all. He thought maybe he should lie, but then Kwean Kwon broke the silence. Uh-oh, looks like our little friend is having some problems. Can you not remember who you are? I'm sorry, I can't. Captain Hobogon continued. And I suppose you can't remember where you're from either, eh? Well, that would be a fair statement. The young man brought his legs over the side of the table. I'm sorry, but besides some of what happened last night, I don't remember anything. The bump on his head throbbed, and he winced in pain. Captain Hobogon looked at the bump. You know, with my extensive medical training, I can help you with that, he said. Extensive medical training, Kwean Kwon said sarcastically. How about some pain reliever? I was just about to say that, Captain Hobogon said immediately, like he was about to say it before Kwean Kwon. Sarge, he yelled out. She's off tonight, Kwean Kwon said impatiently. Oh, yeah, I forgot, Captain Hobogon said, not realizing that Kwean Kwon was mouthing exactly what he was saying. The young man laughed. Oh, look, he can laugh, Kwean Kwon said excitedly. That's a good little sign. You may not have woke up laughing, but you're doing it now. That's a good thing. And it is a good thing the captain found you when he did, Kwean Kwon continued. You would have froze to death if he had not. Captain Hobogon gave the young man a little wink. Kwean Kwon adjusted the blanket that was around the man's shoulders and asked, Whatever were you doing out there? The young man shook his head. I really don't know. He looked at Captain Hobogon, and he could tell that he was suspicious. I know you probably have a lot of questions, Captain Hobogon, but I'll do my best to answer them, but I can't promise I'll be much help. Besides a statue and a mouse, I don't remember much. Like your name? The young man thought a moment. Sorry, Captain, but I just can't remember. Where you're from? The young man thought real hard. I'm sorry, but I don't know, the young man answered, feeling kind of ashamed. How about why were you in Hubland, or even how you got there? The young man just stared at Captain Hobogon, a blank look on his face. He shook his head. No, I'm sorry, Captain, but I have no clue. Captain Hobogon looked at Kwean Kwon, who had a big smile on her face. The captain did not. He was concerned. Maybe a good night's sleep will help. Why don't you rest and we'll try again later? I have just the place for you, Kwean Kwon said. She brought out a huge ring of keys and went over to a locked door. She unlocked it, all the while looking at the young man. Not many people know about this, she said. She opened the door, and behind it was a little bedroom. It's one of those things just in case I can't get out of here. You can rest your cute little head in here for a while. You're not going to imprison me in there, are you? Oh, spirit, no, Kwean Kwon exclaimed. You're my cute little guest. Kwean Kwon could tell the man was frustrated by Captain Hobogon's questions and the fact that he didn't have answers. She flashed him a big smile. He smiled back at her. The way I see it, you must be frustrated because you don't know your cute little name, or where you're from, or what you were doing freezing to death in Hubland. And by the looks of what you're wearing, you're not from around here. You know what I mean? She opened her arms wide to give him a hug. So, let me be the first to welcome you to the lands. From his office window, high up on the third floor of the carousel building, Director Jakalian admired his Techland. But right now, Techland was having a little crisis, one which he was deeply upset with. The professor, the man responsible for designing and building much of the technology for Director Jakalian's Techland, had run away. As he looked out the window, Agent Clayton walked in, without knocking as usual. Director Jakalian didn't care much for Agent Clayton. He was too much the old way, still believing in that thing referred to as the spirit. Besides, he was the right-hand man for the chairman, who just happened to be the big boss, the main man in all of Techland, the top brass in the corporation. Without the chairman, there would be no Techland, at least not like it was now. They would just be another boring land like all the others, and that just wouldn't do for Director Jakalian. So, for the time being, he would tolerate Agent Clayton till the time was right to raid the corporation's assets and take over. Agent Clayton stood beside Director Jakalian. Any sign of the professor? Agent Clayton asked. No, nothing. I don't understand it. How could he have just slipped out? Director Jakalian went over to his desk and picked up a cigar. He took a few puffs of it, and that seemed to relax him. I don't understand it, eh? Tough guy, why can't you just use that spirit thing? Your, he made air quotes, ability to locate him. There's still too much good spirit out there interfering with it. Besides, we have a bigger problem. Agent Clayton moved around the desk as Jakalian slouched down in his chair, blowing cigar smoke into the air. Really? And what would that be, Chief? Well, it's obvious that we have a fungus among us. What the hell does that mean? It means, Director Jakalian, that there is someone here who helped the professor escape. I mean, I don't care, but such a thing does not bode well with the chairman. With this, Jakalian sat up. I'm just saying. I suggest you take some action and find out who it is. All right, tough guy. I'll do that. He took another big puff. Any luck with the princess? As expected, she had some weak excuse for being where she was. I still believe she had a hand in on the professor's escape. Hey, can't you use your, air quotes, ability thing to have her tell you where he is? I mean, come on, what the heck is it good for? You can never do anything with it. You just keep talking about it like it's some sort of all-powerful type thing. And hey, do you hear music? Director Jakalian's words trailed off as he started hearing something. He looked at Agent Clayton, who had that stupid grin on his face. The music started out barely audible, but started slowly getting louder. Agent Clayton came around and stood beside Director Jakalian. I find your lack of faith disturbing. My ability, the use of the spirit, is nothing to be scoffed at by fools like you. The music got louder in the director's head. They were children, and they were singing something about being on a small world. All your technology, your weapons, your computers, developed by your professors and scientists, have nothing compared to the power of the spirit. The kids were really singing now. Director Jakalian put his hands over his ears, but it just did nothing to stop them. They kept on and on and on about this world of laughter and this world of tears. They just kept going on and on, louder and louder, repeating over and over and over that it was indeed a small world. Okay, I believe you, Clayton. Make it stop. Agent Clayton laughed a fake laugh, and the music stopped. Next time, I won't be so kind. I'm off to meet our contacts in the tribe. I believe this would be a good time for them to make their move. Yeah, okay, we'll tell that weirdo Ram I said hello, Director Jakalian said, taking a big puff on his cigar. That dude's as strange as you are. That dude is an important part of the chairman's plan. Agent Clayton grabbed the cigar out of the director's hand and crunched it up. Don't ever smoke one of these in my presence again. He threw the crumpled cigar on the floor and walked out. Director Jakalian looked at his ruined cigar and wanted so badly to just run after Agent Clayton and beat his face in. But he couldn't. He picked up his damaged cigar and tried to fix it, but it just fell apart. And don't you ever smoke one of these in my presence again, Director Jakalian said, mimicking Agent Clayton. I'm all-powerful and can make children sing, but I can't solve a problem or find an escapee or speak normal to save my life. he continued as he removed another cigar from a box on his desk. He lit the cigar, took a big puff, and blew the smoke towards the door. "One day, Agent Clayton, you will be surprised at how much you have no idea what is going on around here." He took another puff of his cigar. He knew it was time to focus in on more pressing issues. Agent Clayton was probably correct in saying there was a spy who helped the professor escape, so that had to be taken care of. And the professor still hadn't been found, so that had to be taken care of. And capturing the princess was going to upset all the other lands, so that had to be taken care of. And he had had a lot of coffee this morning, so that had to be taken care of. But most importantly, his project, his baby, the ultimate weapon in all the lands, was close to being completed, so that most definitely had to be taken care of. Young Joe stood at the workbench, staring at the magic torch that lay on it. He ran all the way back to the ranch and was now in the barn trying to figure out just how the heck he could make that woman reappear. There was no on and off switch or anything like that. He tried shaking it, but that did nothing as well. He reached into his bag and felt around for the matches he had in there, making a mental note to refill his tranquilizer shot. He was also a little upset about not getting his rope off that horse. He found the matches, but before he could do anything, he heard Aunt Lucy call him from the house. "Young Joe! Joe!" "What is it, Aunt Lucy?" he answered from inside the barn. "Can you come here a second, please?" Young Joe started to exit the barn, then stopped. He was a little unsure about leaving the torch by itself, so he went back to the work table and picked it up. He then exited the barn, heading towards the house. Aunt Lucy was standing on the porch just outside the kitchen door. "Are you okay, young Joe?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I could see you running from my kitchen window. Looked like an evil spirit was chasing you." "Actually, I think it was something worse," young Joe replied with a chuckle. "Don't tell me it was Gonzo. He could have run that fast." Aunt Lucy laughed at her own joke. No, it was some crazed horse or something." Aunt Lucy gave him one of her "you're not making any sense at all" looks. I know it sounds weird, but he nearly killed me for this." He showed her the torch. "This is some sort of magic torch. When it's lit, the smoke produces the image of a lady." Aunt Lucy gave him a little whack upside the head. "I think you've been smoking the magic torch, haven't you?" No, really," young Joe answered, rubbing the side of his head. "It has some message in it. The woman is looking for someone called Kobiran Biashi." Young Joe noticed Aunt Lucy step back from him, giving him one of her "you've said something that has reminded me of the past" stares. "Do you know who he is?" he asked. She shook it off. I don't know who you're talking about. I want you to break that torch up for firewood and get to work." She headed back into the house. "I'm baking pie, so I'm going to need more wood for the stove." Young Joe headed back towards the barn. He couldn't bear the thought of chopping up the torch until he knew exactly what its mystery was. From the kitchen window, she called out to him, "And I expect to see that torch amongst the wood, young Joe." He didn't respond. His thoughts were on how he was going to retrieve the message hidden inside that torch. He went back to the work table and picked up the matches. He set the torch on the table and tried lighting it, but it wouldn't catch. He soaked it in some burning fuel. It still wouldn't catch. He thought about how it first lit, so he threw it down on the ground. Nothing. Frustration was starting to set in. From the house, he could hear Aunt Lucy call out to him, "Where's that firewood, young Joe?" "Get it yourself, you old..." He mumbled, but quickly stopped, remembering that she had a way of knowing what he said under his breath. One final try. He made a clearing on the floor, then lit some hay, making a little bonfire. He placed the torch in the fire, and to his surprise, it actually lit. "Yes!" he exclaimed, jumping in the air. He stared at the fire, waiting for the woman, but there was nothing. In fact, there was no smoke at all. Then an even bigger surprise as the torch seemed to jump out of the bonfire and land on top of some dry hay. Young Joe's eyes popped out as the hay caught fire and began to spread. He immediately jumped on the fire, stomping like a madman, trying desperately to stop the fire from spreading anymore. Luckily, he succeeded, but now frustration turned to anger. "Fine, you don't want to come back? Then I'm going to chop you up." He picked up the torch and blew out what little flames were still burning. He then marched over to the wall, stomping out his little bonfire in the process, and grabbed the axe off the wall. From the kitchen, Aunt Lucy yelled, "Young Joe, where is that firewood?" Young Joe shook the axe in her direction. "I'll give you firewood." He threw the torch on the table, lifted the axe high in the air, and was about to come down on it when, standing in the door, was the horse. "Do it, and die a horrible death," is what young Joe heard in his head. He was actually scared. The horse slowly approached him as young Joe lowered the axe to the table. I really wasn't going to do it." "I don't have time for this fooling around. Give me the torch now." Young Joe jumped as he heard the yell in his head. He grabbed the torch and held it close to his body. I want to know what's so important about this torch, and who the woman is, and who is Kobe Rambiashi." He began to back up, running his options through his head. He didn't refill the shot. The axe was now out of range, but the rope was still around the horse's neck. Could he make a grab for it and try to control the horse just enough so that... Then the unexpected happened. Aunt Lucy walked into the barn, yelling at the top of her lungs, "What in the Jiminy is taking so long in here?" She startled both young Joe and the horse. She stopped, looking at the two of them with one of her "just what the heck are you two doing" looks. The horse turned around and backed up beside young Joe. They looked like two kids who had just got caught doing something they shouldn't be doing. Aunt Lucy gave them a good, long stare before she started in a low tone that slowly worked its way up to a yell. "I don't know what is going on here, but I have 2 pies in the oven that are going bad because I have no firewood to cook them with. Now, you two stop fooling around and get to work." She waited for a reaction. Young Joe pointed to the horse. "Aunt Lucy, this is the crazed horse that was chasing me." She looked at the horse, then to young Joe, then back to the horse. Then she started walking towards them, her tone changing completely. "Oh, he don't look like a crazed horse. He looks like a good horse." She started petting his head, talking to him the way you would talk to a baby. "Yes, you do. You look like a good little horsey. Hey, horsey want a carrot?" She looked over at young Joe. "He's probably starving. That's why he's acting crazy." The horse looked over at young Joe. "I am the one acting crazy?" That was all he could get out when suddenly he felt an abrupt tug. Aunt Lucy was pulling him by the rope. "We're going to put you out in the pasture and get you a little foodsy-woodsy. Speaking of woodsy, young Joe, you better use that marathon speed of yours and get some wood in that stove. Now!" Young Joe took off running, torch still tightly held close to his body. The horse watched him go, then realized what was happening. He started to rear up, but Aunt Lucy would have none of that. "You stop that nonsense right now, or you'll be in big trouble, mister." She gave him one of her "you better do as I say" looks, and the horse had no reply. "I cannot believe this is happening," Kenneth thought to himself as he was tied to the fence by the woman called Aunt Lucy. "The instructions were easy, but I have not completed the assignment. I will not fail." Running Chavez sat up and opened her eyes as she heard, "I will not fail," screamed in her head. She looked over to Giggling Zamora to see if it was her who yelled it, but it wasn't. Giggling Zamora was still sitting at one of the windows, tapping on the glass and giggling. Running Chavez had had just about enough of Giggling Zamora. The yell in her head had startled her, and the two of them had been cooped up together far too long in what she felt was an underwater torture chamber. "Will you please just shut up?" Running Chavez demanded. It was now Giggling Zamora's turn to be startled. She looked away from the window and smiled at Running Chavez. "I am so sorry, Running Chavez, but these fishies are so cute." She let out another laugh as she tapped on the glass again. Running Chavez marched over to her. "For the last time, they are not real." Running Chavez pointed out one of the windows. "If you look close enough, you can see the strings that hold them in place. So will you please stop trying to get their attention by tapping on the glass?" I know they're not real, but they are so cute. And they are better to look at than anything else around here. Running Chavez made a fist as though she were going to hit her, but walked away instead. We have got to find some way of getting out of here and find out where the princess is. She paced around, looking at the ceiling for the answers. As she got to the end of the cell, she stopped, looking closer above her. You know, this looks like it could open up here, she said, pointing up. Unfortunately, the row of chairs that went boing had stopped too far back for her to get a better look. She backed away. I wonder if I could use a little magic on it. That got Giggling Zamora's attention. Ooh, it would be nice if you could conjure up a helpful spell, Giggling Zamora remarked. Yes, it would, agreed Running Chavez, but I do not have my magic bag with me, and it would be nice to have a little fire to work with. Ooh, and it would be even nicer to have some marshmallows to roast over that fire, Giggling Zamora said, rubbing her tummy and licking her lips. Running Chavez simply rolled her eyes and started looking around for anything that she might be able to get to burn. Then a stern voice was heard from above. Looking for something? Running Chavez jumped as the ceiling began to open right where she thought a door may have existed. Ha! I was right. See, Giggles, there is a door there. Running Chavez, you are so smart. Steps formed as the door opened all the way. Then down walked a short, stout, militaristic woman, dressed in a gray uniform and carrying a foot-long pointing stick. She walked like a person who was in complete control and wanted everyone to know it. Slowly, she descended the stairs, glancing back and forth between the two women. She definitely was intimidating to Giggling Zamora, who stopped breathing every time the lady looked at her. Running Chavez stood her ground bravely, but couldn't help swallowing what little saliva she had whenever the lady looked away from her. The lady finally reached the bottom, placing both feet together and producing a really evil grin. Hello, ladies, she said with a nod. Welcome to Techland. I am Mara James, and I would like to ask you a few questions. She motioned to them to sit down, which Giggling Zamora did right away. Running Chavez began to say something, but was quickly met with a stopping motion from Mara's hand. I ask the questions. You speak only to answer. Running Chavez closed her mouth and sat down. Thank you. Now, here's what I would like to know. What were you tribal ladies doing in the neutral lands, close to our land, last night? She looked at both of them, still with a smirk on her face. Are we allowed to speak now? Running Chavez asked, sounding like a spoiled kid. Mara James let out a laugh, then strode over to Running Chavez. In a flash, she grabbed Chavez's face, pushing her lips together to make a kissy face. I believe that was a question I asked. Is it not that hard to understand, even for a tribesperson? Now answer my question. Giggling Zamora started, giggling. Mara James glanced over to her, expecting her to stop with the treacherous gaze she gave. But Giggling Zamora didn't. She just kept on giggling and pointing at Running Chavez. What is so funny? An agitated Mara James asked. Still giggling, Giggling Zamora said, That was a question, was it not? Yes, Mara James answered, growing a little more impatient. Well, it is just Running Chavez looks like one of these cute fishies when you do that with her face. With that, Running Chavez started to laugh, spraying what little saliva she had in her mouth all over Mara James's hand. Mara James quickly released her and wiped her hand on her pants, then took a few steps away and spun around. Okay, she said, regaining composure. Now that you've had your little fun, let's get serious. She smacked the back of one of the chairs with her stick, making an awfully loud noise that caused the two women to get serious real fast. I want to know, right now, what you were doing. We were going to Merchant Valley from the town. That is what, Running Chavez said sternly, giving Mara James one of her own dirty looks. We were on a negotiation mission before your clown stopped us and kidnapped us. And what have you done with the princess? Don't give me that mission story, Mara James replied. Your princess gave us the same stupid excuse, and you don't want to end up like her, do you? Running Chavez stood up. Boing! She took a step towards the short, extremely authoritative-looking lady, then stopped. What have you done with the princess? She asked, hatred laced her tone. Let's just say, your cute little fish, she directed towards Giggling Zamora, they've been feeding on her. Running Chavez jumped towards her, but was met with a swift kick. The first one stunned her. The second one knocked her to the floor. Mara James stood over Running Chavez, herself now laughing. Ha! I may be short, but I carry a big punch. She walked away in a pompous manner, taking great pleasure in her little victory. As she reached the steps, she spoke with her back to them. Am I to take it that this is the story one plans to die with? She spun around, crossing her arms in front of her. Running Chavez was getting up, rubbing her sore stomach. Giggling Zamora sat there, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Well, Miss James, Giggling Zamora started, but didn't get a chance to finish. I am not Miss James, she screamed. You can refer to me as Mara James or Master James, but don't ever call me Miss James. She quickly composed herself. Of course, she continued, producing that evil grin again, I don't think you're going to live long enough to call me anything again. Master James, Giggling Zamora started again, this time getting up and slowly approaching her. Her tone was very sweet and gentle, and her demeanor was nothing like it normally was. We do not know what this is all about. Honestly, it seems to me that something really bad must have happened here. She nodded towards Mara James as if to ask her for confirmation of her story, but got nothing, so she continued. And now you are looking for a quick and easy solution. Please tell me, in your great mistaken haste, that you did not hurt our beloved princess. Please, could you tell us that she is all right? Mara James was caught in a spell. She felt her heart begin to soften and her strength begin to weaken. This lady spoke to her in a way a nurse speaks to a baby, so soft, so caring. Before she could realize what was happening, she answered, Your princess is still alive. She stopped. She shook her head, knowing something was wrong, but couldn't figure out what. She looked back at Giggling Zamora, then turned and climbed the stairs leading out of the cell. As she got to the top, she was still fighting a fog in her head. The door shut and sealed closed, and Mara James slowly regained composure, not really sure of what just happened. Giggling Zamora let out a snicker. Good work, Running Chavez exclaimed, patting Giggling Zamora on the back. I love it when you do that, as long as you're not doing it on me. At least we found out that the princess is all right. That was my main concern. She sat down. Now, if you do not mind, I am going to look at the fishies. Just look how cute they are. Running Chavez shook her head as Giggling Zamora laughed and tapped on the glass. Running Chavez knew that time was short, and she was going to have to do something to save herself, Giggling Zamora, and the princess. Sheriff Bob stood on the porch of the sheriff's office of the Western Territories. He loved his town and his job. Every morning and every night, he enjoyed just walking the streets, admiring the way the sun glistened on the river way in the distance, listening to the sounds of the land, waking up, then going back to sleep. He loved the respect given to him by the people he met. They appreciated the hard work he did to keep their town respectable. And he did it all, mostly, from either behind his desk or from the local coffee house. He took a sip of his cup of coffee, and he looked up out to the River of Wonder. He knew that somewhere in the far distance, members of the tribe were getting ready in their canoes and heading to their spot down the road from him to set up shop. His stomach dropped as he thought about what he was going to have to do this morning. He really didn't want to do it, but he knew he better, or else he would face the wrath of Gonzo. He looked over at the Orseshoe, and sitting out in front of it was Gonzo's gang. He didn't like those guys. They were smug and conceited and thought they were better than everyone else, especially him. He gave them a good long stare over his cup of coffee, and right on cue they all turned and looked in his direction. It was an epic silent staring match. It was finally broken when Big O, the bartender and manager of the Horseshoe, walked around the corner by the mercantile outpost. He walked with a pep in his step and was surprised to see the sheriff standing on the porch of his office. He diverted his path and walked towards Sheriff Bob. "Morning, Sheriff," Big O said. "Good morning, O," Sheriff Bob replied. "I didn't expect to see you out here so early," Big O said with a smile. "Big trouble brewing, or just a fresh pot of coffee?" "To be honest, O, your boss kept me up all night." Big O shook his head. "Yeah, he can be a demanding so-and-so, that's for sure." "Why'd you ever sell the Horseshoe to him, O?" Sheriff Bob asked. Big O smiled. "He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Besides, it probably should have been his to begin with. And," Big O continued, patting Sheriff Bob on the shoulders, "it's more fun tending bar and singing in the shows than it ever was owning it." "Well, I just don't know how you work for Gonzo," Sheriff Bob said. He's not that bad," Big O answered, not sounding very convincing. "He lets me do my thing, and I just have to put up with his stupidity." The two men looked at each other. Big O was easily 40 years older than Sheriff Bob, but he had such a very youthful spirit about him. "Hey," Big O continued, "Lily's coming to town. It's going to be a good show. Come by and I'll buy you a drink." "I may just do that." The two men laughed, both of them knowing there was no way Sheriff Bob was going to be at that show. "Well, better go get the Horseshoe ready for business. Gonzo's gang's going to be wanting some breakfast, as will Gonzo." The two men shook hands, then Big O crossed the dirt road over to the Horseshoe. As he approached the front door, the members of Gonzo's gang stood up. "Hi-O," Todd said. "Hi-O," Roy said. "It's off to work I go," Big O said as he unlocked the doors to the Horseshoe and walked in. Before the others could enter, he turned and put his hands up. "Give me time to get things ready, gentlemen." He slowly closed the door on them and locked it. He loved that he could do that to Gonzo's men. It made him feel like he had some authority over the men who were feared in the Western Territories. As Big O walked in, he entered a small lobby area. Just a few feet inside the lobby was a podium. Behind the podium was a solid wall with obscured glass panels on the far left and right. You could only see lights and shadows through the glass, but not much else. Gonzo didn't want anyone standing in the lobby to be able to enjoy the show. Behind the solid part of the wall was Gonzo's personal box. Big O turned to the right and entered into the Horseshoe. The Horseshoe was the most happening place in all the territories. It was well known for its drinks and its gambling, grub, and shows. Especially its shows. For in every show were the best showgirls around. After a hard day on the range, or in the mine, or just counting money, there was nothing like heading to the Horseshoe for some good old-fashioned food and fun. And on weekends, well, it was a non-stop party starting from sundown Friday night to sundown Sunday evening. Well, and like almost everything else in the Western Territories, it was owned by Gonzo. Big O stood there taking it all in. The Horseshoe was elegant, beautiful, and shaped in a horseshoe. There was a big stage against the far wall. The dining room and the two balconies formed a horseshoe around the stage. To the right was the bar. To the left was a doorway to a small casino. The Horseshoe was ornate, with lots of gold and beige paint to make it more elaborate than it really was. Right now it was dark and the fancy red curtain was down, hiding the stage. Everyone knew how much Big O loved the Horseshoe. He had owned it for a while, but like everything else, Gonzo owned it, and Big O was now responsible for its operations. He could have taken the money and left town, but he loved the Horseshoe so much. He tended bar, worked the kitchen, and best of all, worked the stage. He loved being up there, introducing the lineup of acts, doing a little singing and dancing, and the part he loved the most, interacting with the showgirls. They were what made the Horseshoe the most popular place in the territories, if not all the lands. And that was what he loved most about the Horseshoe, and why he could never leave it. "Good morning, my love," he said. "Let's make it a great, big, beautiful day." As the rising sun turned the water of the River of Wonder into the color of fire, great Chief Isaac stood by the shore, his heart heavy deep in his chest. His oldest daughter was somewhere out in the great beyond, and he knew she was in trouble. She never made it to Merchant Valley, so that only meant one thing. She had been captured. He should have never let her go, but he couldn't resist her determination and fire. When she had her heart into something, there was no denying her. He now prayed that her spirit did not weaken while she was captive, but continued to burn within, giving her the energy to escape that which binds her. Chief Isaacs closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "O Spirit, you bring the lands to life and protect us. Please, I ask that you be with my daughter, the Princess Natalie. Keep her fire alive and awaken in her the abilities she possesses." Chief Isaacs took another deep breath, then slowly blew it out over the river. He opened his eyes, smiled, then sighed. He could hear that someone was approaching him from behind. He needn't turn around to know who it was. The speed and the anger of the walk told him. The 16-year young and brave tribe warrior, Bernal, was about to speak his mind. But before the warrior got to him, Chief Isaacs raised his hand, signifying to him to stop. He slowly turned to see Bernal almost upon him, eyes burning with anger. His whole face said exactly how he felt. He was really pissed off. "Brave Bernal," the great chief began in a calm voice, "I know you feel betrayed. I did not tell you what was happening, and I allowed my daughter, the Princess Natalie, heir to the tribe, to endanger herself doing something that you should have done. Please, you must understand that a decision had to be made quickly and quietly." "I understand nothing," the warrior screamed. "How could you send her into that danger and not even consult me on—" "I say again, young brave Bernal, the decision was mine, and I did not have the luxury of time. The princess knew what was happening and insisted on doing what she did. I wish I had been stronger and sent you." "I do too. Strength is not something I lack. I know I do not know the whole story, and I doubt very much that you will tell it to me. But from what I understand, she is being held captive in Techland. Is this true?" "Brave Bernal, Is this true?" The great Chief Isaacs looked out across the river. He knew what was going to happen. No matter what he said, Bernal would leave to rescue the princess, for he loved her very much. They had grown up together like brother and sister, and he would not stand by idle while she was in danger. "Yes, it is true, and I know what your heart is saying, but you must listen." Bernal was not listening. "Then I must go rescue her." He turned and walked off. "Bernal, please, listen," the chief beckoned. "There is more going on than you know." Bernal stopped and turned towards Chief Isaacs. "Are you going to tell me?" "Well, no. No, I am not." "Then I am leaving to rescue the Princess Natalie." And off he ran. The great Chief Isaacs watched the warrior leave, then he let out a heartfelt sigh. He turned back to the river and said to himself, "Oh, to be so strong in the heart and so dumb in the head." The young man stood with his back against the door, knowing full well that Captain Hobogon and Kwean Kwon were behind it, wondering who he was and what he was doing. The bump on his head was throbbing, so he put his hand on it. The room was small but cozy. There was a bed with a nightstand next to it. In the far corner was a desk, and across from it, in another corner, was a dresser. "No window," he said as he looked around the room. "Not that I have any energy to climb out of one." He walked slowly to the bed and sat down. He closed his eyes and tried to search his memory for anything beyond when he woke up face down in the grass. There was nothing. The ringing in his head started up again, and even though his eyes were closed, there was such brightness that it actually hurt. He opened his eyes and the brightness continued. Then a knock on the door threw everything back to normal. "Hello?" Kwean Kwon's voice came from the other side of the door. "Is it okay if I come in?" "Sure," the young man replied. She opened the door. "I brought you a cute little glass of water, just in case you get thirsty." "Thank you, Kwean Kwon. Are you sure you are not hungry? I can grab you something to eat." "I'm fine. Thank you, though," he said, smiling at her. "Well, we will be just on the other side of the door if you need anything. We are here to help, you know what I mean?" The young man smiled. "I appreciate it." Kwean Kwon slowly backed out of the room, smiling at him as she did. As she closed the door, the man let out a little laugh. "This is all so bizarre," he said as he laid down in the bed. "It just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?" The young man smiled. He thought about how it was the first time he had smiled for as long as he could remember. But then he remembered that he couldn't really remember anything anyways, so that made him smile again. He closed his eyes. The bed was so much more comfortable than the table or the ground. "Well, if nothing else, they sure are friendly," he said to himself. "Now, if only I could remember who I am and what I'm doing here, and figure out what it means to trust the process." His eyes were closed, but he could hear some voices on the other side of the door. He could barely make out what they were saying, but he could tell it was Captain Hobogon and Kwean Kwon talking. "How long should we let him sleep?" Captain Hobogon asked Kwean Kwon. "I would say as long as he needs to, you know what I mean?" Kwean Kwon answered. This made the young man laugh. There was something about Kwean Kwon always saying, "You know what I mean," that he found humorous. "Well, if that's the case, I suppose I'll make myself comfortable," Captain Hobogon said. "Oh, yes. Why don't you just do that?" The young man heard Kwean Kwon start to say something, but then her voice became more difficult to hear. It became soft mumbles. The young man strained to listen, but her voice just faded away. The young man thought about getting up, but he was so comfortable. "Must be talking about something they don't want me to hear," the young man said to himself. As he got more comfortable, he thought he could hear a beeping sound somewhere in the distance. "I wonder what that is," he thought. As he focused on the sound, what started out like beeping now sounded like something different. It sounded like a squeak. Thank you for visiting the land. We hope you come visit us again soon. Well, there you have it. Kwean Kwon has welcomed the young man to the lands, and she's given him his own cute little room to hang out in. If nothing else, Kwean Kwon is very hospitable. You got to meet the great Chief Isaacs. He's finally made an appearance. Now, he was referred to a couple of times in previous episodes, so now you get to meet him. And you got to meet Burn All. Very impatient Burn All. Very upset Burn All. Now, question here, was Chief Isaacs right in sending Princess Natalie on this mission, or should he have sent Burn All? I don't know. And what's Burn All going to do? You think he's going to stay put, or is he going to take off and try to rescue Princess Natalie? Well, we're going to have to keep listening to find out. Mara James made an appearance. She was tasked with interviewing Giggling Zamora and running Chavez, and she got about as much information as Agent Clayton did. Now, in episode 9, you get to experience a few more abilities, right? Now, you already kind of knew about Agent Clayton's ability with the breakers, and that he can, have people hear a crazy song in their head that could quite possibly get stuck in there, and you keep singing it over and over. But now you've seen Giggling Zamora's ability. At least Mara James got to experience that a little bit. So, if I were writing this story, I may recommend that you keep her ability in the back of your head, just in case. It may kind of come into play a little bit later on. And although you may not hear from the Princess Natalie and Giggling Zamora and running Chavez for a while, there is more to those tribeswomen than meets the eye. So stay tuned. In the next few episodes, you're going to see more of Agent Clayton, and you're going to hear maybe a little bit about one of his projects. You'll also be spending some time in Rosie's Tavern, and more time in the Western Territory. So there's still plenty of stuff going on in the lands. Also, is the young man ever going to wake up? Huh? Got to stick around. Got to visit us for episode 10 to find out. But before we leave, I got a little message here from Giggling Zamora. And Giggling Zamora says, "Hello all. I hope you are enjoying your time in the lands. It truly is a wonderful, spirit-filled place. I certainly hope you will come back again and that you have pressed the like and subscribe buttons. You know, I could make you do it, but it is so much better if you do it on your own. Do not forget to allow for notifications and do leave some comments. Now, if you do not mind, I would like to get back to these cute little fishies. They are so cute." Thank you very much, Giggling Zamora. I do hope you listen to her. You don't want her to be whispering that stuff to you, you know. So leave comments, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and come back and visit us again real soon. Once again, happy St. Patty's Day to all of you viewing this on premiere day. In the meantime, I do want to remind you, please, keep the spirit alive.